Satyamev Jayate. In this topic, we are going to discuss about the Zanskar Range. So let's get started. As you can see, this is the Indian subcontinent. And you already know the structures, that is the Tropic of Cancer and the Himalayas. Now, this is a part that I keep repeating, so you can just skip it forward. So, Himalayas. As you can see, Himalayas, you see it as a monolith, a single structure. But Himalayas is composed of many different ranges. So this is how the Himalayas look like. You have the Trans-Himalayas, Great Himalayas, Mid Himalayas and the Outer Himalayas. Let me show you. So this is the Trans-Himalayas, the Great Himalayas, the Mid Himalayas and the Outer Himalayas. There is another range of Himalayas called as the Northeastern Himalayas, which we will discuss later. For the time being, let's say there are 4 ranges in Himalayas: Trans, Great, Mid and the Outer. Now, we are essentially interested in the Zanskar Range. Zanskar Range basically comes in Trans-Himalayas. So this is the Trans-Himalayas. Okay, if you have noticed, the Trans-Himalayas comes at the top, the northernmost Himalayas. Okay, the whole Kashmir region, basically the whole Kashmir Ladakh region essentially comes under Trans-Himalayas. Okay, Kashmir Ladakh region comes under Trans-Himalayas, Gilgit-Baltistan, all those regions. So this is the Trans-Himalayas. Okay, and it covers parts of Afghanistan, Pakistan, India and China. Right, so the Trans-Himalayas is itself divided into 4 parts. Okay, so this is the Trans-Himalayas and it is divided into 4 parts. The first is the Karakoram Range, which we have done. The second is Ladakh Range, which we also have covered. Third is the Zanskar Range, which we are doing now. And finally, we will have the Kailash Range. Right? So, these are the ranges and these are the entirety of Himalayas. So, let me show you how it works. Okay? So, Himalayas has 4 divisions: the Trans, the Great, the Mid and the Outer Himalayas. We are interested at this point in Zanskar Range. Okay, the Trans-Himalayas contains the Zanskar Range. Right, so this is how it looks like. Okay, the Karakoram Range, Ladakh Range, Zanskar Range and Kailash Range. We are interested in the Zanskar Range. Right, so this is the Himalayas. Let me just split the Trans-Himalayas into the 4 divisions. So as you can see, we have the Karakoram Range, we have the Ladakh Range, we have the Zanskar Range and finally we have the Kailash Range. Right, all the 4 ranges of Trans-Himalayas. Right, so let's focus only on the Zanskar Range. Okay, so earlier we had learned that the Indus River splits the Zanskar Range and the Ladakh Range. Okay, so this is the Indus River. Oh, I'm sorry. The very first question that comes is, why there is a name called as Zanskar? What is the meaning of Zanskar? So essentially, Zanskar comes from the word Zanks. Zanks is the meaning of Zanks is essentially copper. It's a Tibetan word. Zanks is essentially a Tibetan word. It means copper. Now, copper deposits are found around these ranges. Okay, and you already know how copper is important or was important during the ancient times. If you don't know, just go through my lecture, you will understand. Okay, so copper was very essential and the Tibetans probably used it. The name for copper is Zanks and this range is known as Zanskar. Okay, so the question is, why split Zanskar and the Ladakh Range? The Ladakh Range and the Zanskar Range is split by this river, that is the Indus River. Okay, as you can see, the Indus River basically splits Ladakh Range as well as the Zanskar Range. So this is the Ladakh Range to give you a perspective. Okay, as you can see, the Indus River basically splits the Zanskar Range and the Ladakh Range. Okay, so in UPSC or any exam, it asks, what is that river which splits the Ladakh Range and the Zanskar Range? The answer is the Indus River. Right, so moving on. So this is a perspective where the Zanskar Range lie. Okay, now if you're familiar with the Karakoram Range and the Ladakh Range, you should know that the Karakoram Range essentially runs from Gilgit-Baltistan to parts of India and then to Aksai chain. Similarly, the Ladakh range also starts from Gilgit-Baltistan, goes through parts of India and then in Aksai chain. The Zanskar range, however, does not go into Gilgit-Baltistan. Its pretty much entirety is in India, almost 95%. Some parts it reaches in Aksai chain. Okay, some parts in Aksai chain. Okay, Zanskar range does not reach parts of Gilgit-Baltistan, but the Karakoram range and the Ladakh range does. Okay, so we have that. So what's next? So once again, this is the Indus River and the Zanskar range. So the most important mountain or the most prominent mountain in the Zanskar range is the Nankan mountain. Okay, the most prominent mountain in Zanskar range is the Nankan mountain. This is located somewhere here, right? Next, we have the passes. So as you can see, there are three major passes. Right now it's mentioning two. I will show you another pass later. So there are two main passes, actually three main passes. Right now we are discussing two. One is the Zojila Pass and the second one is Fotla Pass. These two passes basically act as a communication way between Kashmir and Ladakh. Okay, between Kashmir and Ladakh. So these passes were the way through which the people reached Kashmir from parts of Afghanistan or even from Tibet. Okay, so Zojila Pass and Fotla Pass are quite prominent. Now, if you want to learn more about the passes, there is a dedicated video about the passes itself in my channel. Okay, you can go through it. Okay, now let's learn about the third pass. So there is one more pass called as Baralacha Pass. Now this pass is another prominent pass because it connects Ladakh to Lahore. Lahore is basically Himachal Pradesh. So it connects Ladakh and Lahore. Baralacha Pass. So three important passes: Zojila Pass, Fotla Pass, and the Baralacha Pass. Zojila Pass and the Fotla Pass connects Ladakh to Kashmir. The Baralacha Pass connects Ladakh to Lahore. Simple. Okay, moving on, let's talk about the rivers. There are two major important rivers. Okay, one is the Zanskar River and the second one is the Hanle River. Okay, Zanskar River and the Hanle River, and this is how it looks like. Okay, now there are some other rivers like the Suru River and the Kurna River, but I really can't find the way through which it goes through. So just I'm mentioning that if the question arises, is Kurna River or the Suru River is part of Zanskar range? Yes. Okay, remember there are four important rivers that rise. That's the Kurna River, the Zanskar River, the Suru River, and the Hanle River. Okay, so these are the most important rivers. However, I could not find, or we could not find, where the Kurna River or the Suru River rises or what's their direction. So I have just mentioned the Zanskar River and the Hanle River, right? So moving on. Okay, now the question is, why the Zanskar range is dry? Now this is something that we have discussed when talking about the Ladakh range, why Ladakh range is dry. Similarly, the same question is why the Zanskar range is dry. Now remember this is how the monsoon works. Basically, the clouds collect water from the ocean. A very simple way to say, okay? The clouds collect water from the ocean and it brings to parts of India. Okay? The very first people to receive the rain or the monsoons is the people in Kerala, then Goa, then Karnataka, Maharashtra, and so on. Okay? Later, slowly, these clouds start moving towards the northern India. Okay? And they bring the rainfall to these parts. Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, maybe parts of Rajasthan, and so on. Later, they move towards the north. Okay? So when they move towards the north, they reach parts of Himalayas. Okay? Now, many parts of Himalaya do receive enough rainfall. But by the time these rains reach these parts, they are pretty much over with moisture. The moisture level considerably goes down. Okay? They are devoid of the moisture. Okay? And another important thing that you have to know is the Great Himalayas. The Great Himalayas are quite tall. Let me just show you a perspective. Okay? As you can see, the Great Himalayas are quite tall and they prevent these moisture clouds, the clouds with moisture, to reach the Zanskar range. As you can see, these these clouds with moisture are prevented to reach the Zanskar Range and the Ladakh Range. And that is why the Zanskar Range and Ladakh Range are, pretty much dry regions. They are cold but without any moisture. All right, moving on. So we are going to discuss some parts on the culture and heritage and history of Zanskar. Now remember this, Zanskar Range is famous because they had found the deposits of copper. Okay, there are deposits of copper, and that's why the Bronze Age actually flourished here. Okay, there was something called as Bronze Age. Okay, there was human activity in the Bronze Age in the Zanskar Range. Now, later, you should understand that Gautam Buddha, okay, the Siddhartha was born in Nepal, but Buddhism essentially started in parts of, let's say, Bihar and UP, in that area. Later, it spreads to parts of India. Now, Buddhism reaches Kashmir. From Kashmir, through the passes, that is the Zojila Pass, they reach Leh and Ladakh, right? So, even though Buddhism originated in Bihar, but the traces of Buddhism has vanished. However, Leh, Ladakh and that region is entirely Buddhist. Even Tibet still is Buddhist. Now, despite centuries of invasions from, Afghanistan, parts of Pakistan, and from, the Mongol invasion, the Buddhism has survived in the parts of Leh and Ladakh. Okay, and you should also understand, during the invasion of Tibet, the Chinese actually tried to finish off Buddhism. However, due to Indian government's secularism, the Buddhism still thrived in parts of Ladakh. Awesome, right?